USA podcast, where we put you on the map. This is Ron Costa broadcasting live in Las Vegas in the Mappable USA studios. And today we are going to take the show where everybody wants to be taken. We're talking about crowdfunding, real estate crowdfunding, and then that leads us into opportunity zones. And opportunity zones leads us into Vicky Hachimala from the QOZ Marketplace. Vicky, are you there today? How you doing?
I'm here. I'm doing fine. Fabulous day in Vegas, except just when we started to buy our suntan lotion, it became winter again. So there you go.
Well,
but we have
last too long.
Excellent special guest with us today.
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny. We went to that Opportunity Zone Expo last week over at the Mandalay Bay, met a lot of people. Some of these people really stood out for us. And in particular, our guest today, Vicky, I'm sure you share the same sentiment. We've got Sasha Favelukis, one of the co-founders of CoPlace, on the line. Sasha, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. Yeah, I was saying, we were going by all the booths. We stopped by your booth, and you and your colleagues there really floored us on what you guys were doing in Opportunity Zones. Why don't you tell the audience your background and how you got involved in Opportunity Zones and what CoPlace is in particular?
Yes, absolutely. So my background is I've always been in the financial market, specifically real estate. I was started off my career in the secondary market and probably 2001, I think, and we were packaging up loans and selling them, and then we started a mortgage company, real estate company. And then after that, I got into hard money lending. And it's kind of funny that we're very social impact focused, coming from a hard money lending background, because usually those things don't work very well with each other traditionally. And we've always done some deals that were pretty much all of the deals that we've done have been real estate deals, as far as, you know, purchasing and holding on to properties, have been in opportunity zones, what now are opportunity zones. And we've done this thing that, you know, at the time we called it just making a deal work, which was, you know, in these rough areas, in economically depressed areas, you gotta do something to make the draw, to push people to try to do something. And, you know, I came to find out in the last few years that it's called social impact. I didn't know what it was called. Didn't know there was a name for it. And it's something that's always been really important for me because, you know, I don't have time for an area to catch up or get better from everyone else doing stuff. I have always pushed myself to, or at least not myself, but given the community the tools that they needed in order for the community to really take a stance and be proud of whatever is going on in that community.
Well, and that's the whole concept behind opportunity zones, that, yes, there's a nice tax incentive. Yes, you can defer your capital gains taxes and all of that for the investor, but the whole goal and the whole premise is to uplift the community, to help the folks that live there and the businesses that work to feel good about themselves because you've elevated their quality of life. That's, you know, that's the best thing you can do.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree. The issue that a lot of people have in these communities to do that is that, you know, the whole opportunity zone designations came from, as far as I understand, the inverse of redlining. And I don't know if the people listening are familiar with it, but you can look it up. But basically, it was dissuading investors from investing in these types of areas, and these areas have been abused by investors and taken advantage of, the people that live there, by investors for a long time. So when you come in with your best foot forward, the people that live there don't believe you.
Right.
Because they're just used to being abused, and it takes time to get through that. And the way that I've done it is by action and not by promising stuff, because
a lot of people they tune you out when you start promising this, that, and the other to an area that's been promised everything and receives actually nothing. So they automatically are just a little bit wary of anybody who wants to fix their place or help their community. And somebody, which I think opportunity zones, by creating the incentive for investors to go there with the tax break, you give the investor another reason to go in there, but at the same time, an investor may have $50 million to invest in an opportunity zone, but if they haven't done their due diligence and they're not paying attention to the details of investing and developing that community, you can do more harm than good to that community.
Absolutely. And they're used to that, the more harm than good in these communities, and that's why they're very skeptical when investors come in and try to do something the projects, these types of projects, generally. Gentrification in general is based on, you find the previous comp. When there's a comp, and then you find that, and then you push to the boundary of where you can still use that comp. And I think that isn't necessarily the right way to do things. It's just the only way to do things.
Right.
And so what we do is we go past where the comps are. The comps aren't that important to us. What we do is, I'll give you an example of this. We gentrify communities without displacing. So we bolster economic activity in an area so that rather than building a giant building, because that's what everybody does, because what else are you going to do? What we do is we activate it with some type of use that gives the community something to do and something to be proud of, and to really show the talents of the community, because these communities have a lot of very driven, very talented people. They just don't have the tools in order to show that. And so the example is, right now we're working on a deal here in San Diego that is it's 46,000 square feet of property, urban infill. It's about half a block right on the trolley line. Right now it's zoned for first floor of retail and 80 units above. Now, the property is an empty property with a small warehouse on the side of it. And the reason that it hasn't been built is because it wasn't ready to be built economically. Otherwise, there would be something there. Now, if I were to come in and build those units, the neighborhood wouldn't be able to afford to live in those units because of building costs.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty simple. You can supplement something, the government can supplement something, but at the end of the day, building costs are building costs, no matter where you go.
Right, and if the folks can't afford to live in this brand new, beautiful place you've built for them to live, it makes no difference if you built it or left it a warehouse. Yeah,
well, no, it does, because what happens is you have to import people from another neighborhood in order to afford it.
Purpose.
And that's displacement. That's what that's the problem with gentrification. Gentrification itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just we don't have a tool currently that gentrifies without displacing, aka brings up the economic level of the area, making people make more money so that they can afford to live in that type of brand new unit. And that's what we do. We activate with, we precede the project. I'm sorry, let me rewind a little bit. We build, or adaptively reuse a temporary use of, sometimes container parks. Sometimes we just use what's there, and we activate it with small business. It sounds pretty simple, but it's a little bit complicated just because the neighborhood has to believe you. That seems to be the hardest part.
Right, and here in Vegas, there's a container park in downtown Las Vegas. It's been there for several years now that I'm not sure if you did it or someone else did it, but the concept of it was fabulous. Is bring in freight container cars, railway freight container cars, and you refigure them into little boutique shops and restaurants and put it in an area where there's a playground for kids, and it brought people to the area and enhanced the area, and now people have a place to go in their area that supports the businesses that are doing very well in that area, and that's a fabulous thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a great model. We did not build that one. But we built we built a few different ones. I'll give you a great example of one that we built in San Diego. Our team found this property that was in downtown San Diego. It was a blighted block, but around it was pretty built. And so we did a private-public partnership where we went to the city and did a land lease with them because they were having a hard time selling it. It was one of those redevelopment sites
right.
that they were mandated to sell, and they couldn't sell it. There was a lot of things with this site that made it very challenging. And then when a developer would come and look at it, it was very blighted. There was people hanging out around it, selling drugs, and it was just not a good scene. And what had happened was we came in, we built a modular container park that had, an entertainment venue. It had a bar, it had a dog park, it had a coffee shop, some office, and it also was an activated space where this lot was just empty. So you turn the lights on, and then you create an area that, people will want to come to.
Exactly.
And so we activated this lot in 2014, and we were there for about 3 years. And when the city announced an RFP, the community, which was about, I think we had about 3,000 people that signed a petition, and it wasn't started by us. It was started by the community that said, don't close down this project.
Oh,
and
that's
so
cool.
The city came to us and said, hey, would you mind doing this somewhere else in the next blighted area? Because it seems like the community really likes it and they don't want to lose this asset. And so we picked up the whole project and we moved it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we moved it. It took about 8 hours. We were drinking a beer by 1:30. And it was a permanent improvement as far as anything is concerned because it was connected to sewer, water, electrical. And now on the site, they are in the middle of construction. They're almost all the way up on the building. It's first 5 floors of UCSD Extension Campus, about 56,000 square feet, plus 34 stories of residential on top.
Wow.
Now, if you know anything about universities, a blighted block there's no way. There's no way they would ever move. They need to be in an area that's ready, that wants to be there. And so what we did was we sped up the process by utilizing the community and creating the community a space where you can have a 2,000-person concert one day, and the next day you can have an artisan market that has only small businesses, local businesses. And what is a really important part is you give people a platform and a tool to be able to then move from being in a little art market into the surrounding neighborhood. Because when a block is blighted, everything around it, nobody wants to be there. Nobody wants to rent there, as far as the commercial space. And this is a tool for the community to be able to activate those spaces and disperse the blight. That's kind of the premise of it. But there's more to it than that. This particular project was in an area that was pretty much already gentrified.
Right.
But this was the nexus of what was the blight in the area. Now, in other areas that we've done this in, it's one of those areas that has a lot of people that are very talented, very artistic, and they don't know what to do, where to do, how to do, and all they know is, hey, I have talent and I sell, art, and I don't know how to get it out. I don't know how to, have a business. They just don't have the tools in order to do that. And so what we're providing is a platform where somebody can really get their business and try it out, see if it works. Because if it works, great. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. But when you start businesses in these types of areas that are economically disadvantaged, and they stay in those areas because a lot of them want to, what happens is they'll end up hiring people from those areas.
Exactly.
So the money
That's the key part.
leave.
Yeah, that's the key part of that. I like how you're doing this all without displacement. That is really the key thing here, because for a lot of people, when you talk to them about opportunity zones and they talk about it on a negative light, they always bring up the gentrification issue. They always bring that up. And what you're doing here seems to work on all different levels of this, which is great. But, as you mentioned before, it will requires cooperation with the local authorities too. I mean, how do you guys get the word out so that you can talk to these people there and make them believe that your deal is for real, and you're not trying to take advantage of them? And I can certainly understand their skepticism, people who are in there right now, because I would think that some of these guys would be like, oh yeah, you're just looking to make money and then get out of here. How do you work with those? How do you actually do it to convince the people that this is a good thing for them?
You need to identify who the community leaders are. And when I say community leaders, a lot of people really are, they look to economic development, they look to the CDC, and my community leaders are more on a boots on the ground type of level. They're the people that are in the community that either work in a small business that does something different, or they're the community organizers. Art is a really big driver for me, because my feeling is that a lot of jobs are going to be eliminated with automation, and there's no way around it. But the ones that are not going to be eliminated are people that are, makers. They make something that you can't buy online. They do something with their hands. They fix stuff.
You can't replace the creative spirit.
Right, exactly. And so that's really my focus. What we do is we'll come into a neighborhood and start talking to people, and sometimes we'll buy a property and say, hey, you seem to be the community leader. What's your passion? What do you want? What do you want to do? Because a lot of these people that live in these communities, they have a passion and they have a dream, and they're really good at something, but they spend a lot of time doing stuff like bookkeeping or inventory or that kind of stuff that's not part of what they do. And we give them a tool, which sometimes is a piece of property, and say, look, this is your property now, as far as you have creative control over this thing. You do what you think is right. Here's Here's what our objective is. And when you give somebody creative control, they do their best most of the time because this is their chance to prove themselves.
Well, they have an investment into it. If it fails, it's because they didn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's quite difficult, and it takes years to really create those relationships. And we've been doing that so that we can point back to, look, I didn't do this, but this person did this, and they're part of our team. And, a lot of times, I would say most of the time, the tenant that will take a tenant that is bankable is not necessarily the best thing for the long-term value of a property. I see investors, and it's hard for them to not do this because you have a lot of brokers that are in the middle of things that are looking for a commission that, they want their owner, the owner of the property, to have monthly checks, to not have to worry about it, to not have to do that. And I totally get it. And they should, because a lot of times, most of the time, they're not in the business of hanging out at that property. And they'll put in let's say a Cricket Wireless. Now, Cricket Wireless is a very important thing because people need to be able to get a telephone, but it tells other investors, in my experience, that it's a rough area because it's an A credit tenant that will move into an area that's economically disadvantaged. And, nothing wrong with Cricket Wireless and nothing wrong with, a Dollar General grocery store, but it gives other investors a picture of an area that's not super favorable. Would you agree?
That's right, because if you put the correct businesses or projects into a community that supports the people who live there, it's preferable to putting the wrong project into a community where your motivation is simply, what's my rate of return? And if it's my rate of return that I'm interested in, then your projects are, likely to not work under the opportunity zone concept. But if you match the project to the community and you enhance the people who live in the community, then everybody wins.
And keep the money in the community.
And keep the money in the community so everybody can expand.
Yes, and my preference is always to bolster small business within the community rather than bringing in a different business from outside of the community.
You read my mind on that, Sasha, because everyone talks about these opportunity zones from really a real estate development perspective. But I think if this thing is really going to work to its real purpose of revitalizing communities, the business aspect of it is way more important in the long run. I think that's one of the things that's really, you got to get people working in these areas and businesses coming in and like you said, people utilizing their talents and creating their own businesses. Because if businesses take off there, then you're going to see successful revitalization. Just putting up a building isn't going to do it, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
and you can't put a Nordstrom in a depressed area just because Nordstrom's is successful in L.A. or New York or Vegas. You can't put that in a depressed area and expect people to support it because they can't afford it. So if you don't think about these details first, then you're spinning wheels.
Right. And also, when you put in a larger tenant, a national tenant in a lot of these areas, the people that live in the area see it as you're taking the money and you're shipping it out, which is what's happening instead of trying to taking over their
community as well.
Exactly. And so there needs to be a more of an organic growth from within the community before national tenants come into a lot of these places. And that's why, we're particularly data driven. What our approach is we ask the community what they want. And that can come in a lot of different forms, whether going out to and just talking to people or putting up a sign that says, what do you want here? And then having a Sharpie there and they fill it out. Then
sometimes the biggest ideas are the simplest.
Yeah. And then the other part is we ask the municipality, what do you need here? And then we are very data driven. So we pull a lot of data from big data, and we look at, what are the demographics? What are people searching on Google? What are people looking at on Instagram? What are people telling you? What are people not telling you? And then we combine those three things, and wherever the overlay is, that's what's needed. And a lot of foundations and social impact driven companies will try to do that, and they'll, for instance, see, hey, we need a grocery store, and they'll put a Dollar General or Food for Less, or we need a coffee shop, and they'll put a Starbucks. We need whatever that is, and that's really important. It's the infrastructure, but then you need to supplement that with the small business that stays in the area, because the people need to be proud of what's in their area. And when everybody knows the guy that owns the business or the lady that owns the business, they're more likely to go to that business and support that business. And
exactly.
And
just because you need a grocery store in an area, you don't want to put a Whole Foods grocery store in if the people can't support the Whole Foods, or a Starbucks if they can't afford $5 for a cup of coffee.
And also, it would be great to have more like small bodegas, instead of larger grocery stores, something that's a little bit more accessible, or even, like a farmer's market style in a lot of areas that have, where there's farming around it. So people can just sell
farmer's market
from the area. Yeah.
And I think that's one of I don't know if it's a drawback, but one of the issues with opportunity zones is people are thinking opportunity zones in terms of $100, $500 million funds for investing, but they're not thinking of a $50,000 fund to get a small little area working, or to put a container park in that enhances the community. It's like it's an opportunity, but sometimes opportunities need to have a mindset adjustment in order to make them really successful in all aspects.
Yes, absolutely. And, a lot of these projects that are, on the larger side are not necessarily the right ones for the community in the moment. They might be, down the line. But this is really a very local thing. And my suggestion to a lot of people is, you really have to know the area and know the assets of the area. And those assets, a lot of times, you only know them by being there.
Right.
It's not something that's documented. It's not something that's in the data. It's not something that, is really amplified, because, a lot of these people don't have the tools to do it.
Yeah, and you can't plan a community in Vegas when you're doing it from New York, because you have the money to put in. It's not viable. You just can't do it and be successful under an opportunity zone concept.
Unless you have boots on the ground there.
Are the projects that you work on, do you have many opportunity zone specific projects, or a lot of them outside of the opportunity zone parameters?
Pretty much parameters. Do you mean as far as designated opportunity zone, or are you talking about physical parameters?
Well, I mean, are a lot of your projects in an opportunity zone, or are they outside the opportunity zone or completely away from the opportunity zone?
When I looked back when the designations came in, it pretty much was across the board that 9 out of 10 of the projects that we had done in the past or are doing now are all in opportunity zones.
Oh, that's the score for you.
Yeah, well, it kind of is because, pre-opportunity zones, it doesn't matter that much if you had bought it before 2017. But it was a score for me because it validates that, hey, I've been doing it this way, and I've been doing the things that this was built for. And it was very difficult to really explain to an investor what is the value on a spreadsheet of, we're going to put a mural on this building. It's hard to spreadsheet a mural, but I know that it does well.
Yeah, it sounds like you were a opportunity zones pioneer before opportunity zones was even there. You didn't even know it. See that? You were ahead of the curve on that one for sure.
I was, but I'm not the only person. There's a lot of people that do a lot of passion projects. The difference is that I am in a real estate focused background, finance focused, and this was just something that I did trial and error all these years to figure out all the little pieces, and it's all the pieces put together are this really beautiful thing.
Yeah. I think you should send a letter to President Trump and thank him for qualifying your life's work.
Maybe I will.
Yeah. And now you guys are still concentrating on San Diego, is that right? Real estate in the San Diego area?
Yeah, so right now we're concentrating on real estate in the really in the Southern California area. So we're going to be picking up some projects right now in LA, in San Diego, just to show the full work of the model from A to Z with impact, with opportunity zone dollars. And create a set of operating rules. This is how you do it across the board, and they're all different, but they're not. The basic ideas are.
So if I understand this right, you guys, when you talk about, we're looking to get some deals here, you guys are the actual owners. You develop the properties, you're developers, et cetera. You do the strategic planning on this. You do the architecture. You do all the community activation on this, and then you source the businesses that go into these properties. Is that right? Is that a good overview of what CoPlace does?
Yeah, that's a good overview. We do A to Z. Because every part is really, really important. And if you skip a step or you cut a corner, it's not going to work as well if it works in the first place.
No question.
You can't farm it out to different people who aren't part of a cohesive team that understands A to Z, and you farm out P and it doesn't work.
Right. It's there's this part of working with somebody, that first part when you get to know each other and you get past the friction of who are you, what do you want, are you trying to take advantage of me? It takes years to get past that part when you have a good relationship with somebody.
Right.
And that's a really time-consuming part. That same part that is in these communities of a community believing that you're actually going to do what you do, that happens on every level, whether it's investor level, whether it's on, the people that are working level, whether it's on the community level. And so for me, I tend to think that the word community is at the heart of opportunity zones, because everybody has to work together in order for it to be done properly.
And the heart of everything is trust.
Right. Right, exactly. And the traditional real estate way of I'm gonna get a project and no one's gonna know and I'm just gonna get it done. It's no longer, because there's so many tools, there's so many ways for people to find out things about projects with data, with internet, with everything. There's I was reading about a fairly large development that was going to be going up. I think it was in Colorado, and a small group of people, unofficial community group, decided to protest, and they delayed the project from moving forward, even though it was absolutely to code, to everything, just because nobody asked them what they wanted.
Kind of like the Amazon debacle in New York?
Yes, just like
that.
Boy,
yeah.
There's no communication between the different parts.
Right.
And everybody's after the project getting done, but when you don't have communication, ego becomes a really, really big hindrance on projects.
And speaking of the communication part of this, Sasha, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who may have some more questions or want to find out more information on yourself and what you guys are doing over there. Is there a way people can contact you? Do you have a website, email, phone, or?
Yes. If you get on the website and type, the website is www.coplace.com, COPLACE, and there's a contact us form there, and feel free to reach out, and we're happy to talk to you, and something that we've considered doing, just because there's mostly no comps for what we do, so we very much depend on the data to tell us,
exactly
what are the traffic counts, and how many people are there, and what's the growth rate, and what's the GDP per business in the area, and what all of these things that make you feel a little bit better about making an investment in a property, or making an investment in a fund, or making an investment in a community that vindicates what you're doing, rather than just guessing.
Yeah, we could really talk about this forever. It seems we're kind of running out of time here. Vicki, do you have any last questions or anything that we should need to go over?
Well, the only thing I have one last comment, Sasha, and that is that I'm very impressed in the way that you're approaching opportunity zones aside from the norm, and actually doing what opportunity zones are meant to do, which is to enhance the people and the communities in the opportunity zones and bring everybody's quality of life up. And that's fabulous, and I think that's very impressive.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the grand compliments. I much appreciated, and thank you for what you guys are doing and spreading the stories of people that are working in these zones, because people need to know the good parts and the bad parts, and they need to know how to do it properly. If it wasn't for people like you,
it's all about providing information, right?
Yes.
Just like the Opportunity Zone Conference last week where we mentioned. By the way, how'd you guys do with that? That was a pretty good show, don't you think?
Yes, it was a great show. Right before that, we were speaking at another conference called SALT, which was and that was very interesting, because it's a conference of financial advisor, and actually the finance industry, that is, I met a lot of very, very wealthy people there that were very interested in this model, because their concern is this gap of income, this wage gap between extremely wealthy and extremely poor. And it goes back to the automation point. There's a lot of jobs that are being removed, I guess, and they're looking for, how do we fix that? And this is, I'm just relaying. It seemed to be that the model that we're doing seems to hit on that point a little bit. And it was really interesting. Those are two amazing conferences, both of them.
It was both at the same time too. Next year we'll have to somehow create a dual purpose live stream or something. But
that was going on simultaneously in Vegas.
Yes,
yeah,
they were going on at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because some of the folks were going back and forth.
Yeah, it was really interesting, and they were both on different sides of the strip, so it was a little challenging.
Right.
Oh, yay, that would have been fun.
Yeah.
But Sasha, listen, we really appreciate you coming on to the podcast on the Mappable USA podcast. Ladies and gentlemen out there, we're talking to Sasha Favelukis from CoPlace. And I hope you come on again as a show guest as we move forward into this thing. You can give us updates and tell us all about what you guys are doing and provide more information. But this is a really good show with some really interesting and information that not a lot of people are going over these days. So Sasha, I thank you for being a guest.
Thanks a lot, Sasha. And I still think you should send that letter to President Trump.
I will do it. Will you help me write it? I don't know what to say.
Absolutely. You bet. I'll even sign my name as a co-author.
All right, folks. Well, you're listening to the Mappable USA podcast on MappableUSA.com, where we put you on the map. If you'd like to be a guest on one of our shows, just like Sasha was today, go to the website. There's a place there for a guest. Fill out the form, and we'll see what we can do about getting you on the show. And, of course, there's all the syndication points on the homepage. Pick the one you like best. Subscribe, follow, so you don't miss one of our episodes. And we'll be coming back at you shortly with another Mappable USA podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone, and have a great week.